Hey, welcome to the Socrates read-along. This is lesson number 1. You're going to want to make sure that you've printed out the copy of the Gorgias reading so that you can follow along and read and take lots of notes because there's going to be questions about it. I'll even give you a little bit of heads up of what some of the questions are going to be. But make sure you have your copy with you. You're going to hear me read it with you, and then every once in a while I'm going to pop up, kind of scary-like maybe, and kind of help you guide you along and help you understand this. Now this is Plato's writing, but he's writing the dialogues of Socrates. Now Plato is kind of nice to us. He writes this like a play, where different people have different lines, and what's kind of fun about it is you get to see attitudes and personalities come through a little bit, which is kind of fun, and we'll make fun of it a little bit. But he still teaches us the teachings of Socrates. Now why do we study and read Socrates? Well, let me tell you some of the big things I want you to get out of this. First of all, I don't necessarily care if you learn to think the same things that Socrates thinks, but I do want you to learn to think how Socrates thinks. The guy's brilliant. There's a reason that when we talk about really brilliant people, we say Socrates. In fact, let me tell you a quick story. We were reading this in class one time in one of my live classes, and we get to a part and you start to see Socrates lay the trap, and this person just kind of falls right into it. And one of the students in class just said, "Run, you fool, it's Socrates!" You know, just like, don't fall for his trap. Run, you fool, it's Socrates! Well, there's a reason he said that, because Socrates is pretty brilliant. Also, I want you to be able to follow his path of logic. Socrates is very logical. He kind of maps out a very clear argument that leads from one point to another, to another, to another. And that's just a good skill to be able to kind of be familiar with that. One last thing too is I often say, you know, how many of you would like to go back in time and maybe just invite some of the great, brilliant thinkers over and just see what they would talk about and just kind of chat with them one night? Well, if you are interested in thinking at all, you'd be like, oh yeah, I would love to have some of the great men of history or great women of history come to dinner and, you know, just have a dinner conversation with them. Well, there we get the dinner conversation right here. This is actually a dinner conversation. There's the dialogue and everything, so it's kind of fun to just be able to spend a night with Socrates. So have your stuff printed out, read along. It's a play. They're going to get together and discuss things. Socrates is going to ask people lots of questions, and they're going to try to figure out the meaning of the universe. You ready? Get your pencil out, take some notes. Here starts the reading. Gorgias by Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett. Persons of the dialogue: Callicles, Socrates, Seraphon, Gorgias, Polus. Scene: the house of Callicles. The wise man, as the proverb says, is late for a fray, but not for a feast. And are we late for a feast? Yes, and a delightful feast, for Gorgias has just been exhibiting to us many fine things. It is not my fault, Callicles. Our friend Seraphon is to blame, for he would keep us loitering in the agora. Never mind, Socrates, the misfortune of which I have been the cause I will also repair, for Gorgias is a friend of mine, and I will make him give the exhibition again, either now or, if you prefer, at some other time. What is the matter, Seraphon? Does Socrates want to hear Gorgias? Yes, that was our intention in coming. Come into my house then, for Gorgias is staying with me, and he shall exhibit to you. Very good, Callicles, but will he answer our questions? For I want to hear from him what is the nature of his art, and what is it which he professes and teaches. He may, as you, Seraphon, suggest, defer the exhibition to some other time. There is nothing like asking him, Socrates, and indeed to answer a question is a part of his exhibition, for he was saying only just now that anyone in my house might put any question to him, and that he would answer. Gorgias, let me turn to you and ask the same question. What are we to call you? And what is the art which you profess? Rhetoric, Socrates, is my art. Then I am to call you a rhetorician? Yes, Socrates, and a good one too, if you would call me that which in Homeric language I boast myself to be. I should not wish to do so. Then pray do. And are we to say that you are able to make other men rhetoricians? Yes, that is exactly what I profess, to make them, not only at Athens, but in all places. So Socrates has begun asking questions here, and he's trying to figure out something about Gorgias's work. Now, Socrates really doesn't like Gorgias or doesn't have a lot of respect for him, so he's going to make Gorgias look like a fool. But I just want to point out that Gorgias is a rhetorician, and his main source of income is teaching. He's a teacher mostly. He teaches other people how to be rhetoricians. He teaches other people rhetoric. So if Socrates comes in and successfully shows people that the things that Gorgias does is kind of wimpy and weak, well, this threatens his career as a teacher because nobody's going to come to him and pay him to be a teacher anymore if they think the things he does is stupid. So Socrates sets that up at the beginning, Gorgias sets that up at the beginning, that Gorgias is a rhetorician and I teach rhetoric, and Socrates is going to attack it. Here comes the attack.
And now let us have from you, Gorgias, the truth about rhetoric, which you would admit, would you not, to be one of those arts which acts always and fulfill all their ends through the medium of words. True. Words which do what, I should ask? To what class of things do the words which rhetoric uses relate? To the greatest, Socrates, and the best of human things. That again, Gorgias, is ambiguous. I am still in the dark, for which are the greatest and best of human things? I dare say that you have heard men singing at feasts, the old drinking song, in which the singers enumerate the goods of life. First, health, beauty next. Thirdly, as the writer of the song says, wealth honestly obtained. Yes, I know the song, but what is your drift?
So far, Socrates has been trying to find out what Gorgias' idea of rhetoric is. What does rhetoric even mean? And the best answer he's got, Gorgias says, well, it gives us the best things. And Socrates says, that's not a very good answer. I want to know what the best things are. So he's going to tell a little story here that talks about people that say, I create the best things. I'm a trainer. I'm a moneymaker. Because I create things, and the things I create are the best. And then he's going to ask Gorgias, what do you create that makes you better than these other people that create? So let's go on.
I mean to say that the producers of those things which the author of the song praises, that is to say, the physician, the trainer, the moneymaker, will at once come to you, and first the physician will say, "Oh, Socrates, Gorgias is deceiving you, for my art is concerned with the greatest good of men, and not his." And when I ask, "Who are you?" he will reply, "Oh, I am a physician." "What do you mean?" I shall say. "Do you mean that your art produces the greatest good?" "Certainly," he will answer, "for is not health the greatest good? What greater good can men have, Socrates?" And after him the trainer will come and say, "I too, Socrates, shall be greatly surprised if Gorgias can show more good of his art than I can show of mine." To him again I shall say, "Who are you, honest friend, and what is your business?" "I am a trainer," he will reply, "and my business is to make men beautiful and strong in body." When I have done with the trainer, there arrives the moneymaker, and he, as I expect, will utterly despise them all. "Consider, Socrates," he will say, "whether Gorgias or anyone else can produce any greater good than wealth." "Well," you and I say to him, "and are you a creator of wealth?" "Yes," he replies. "And who are you?" "A moneymaker." "And do you consider wealth to be the greatest good of man?" "Of course," he will be his reply. And we shall rejoin, "Yes, but our friend Gorgias contends that his art produces a greater good than yours." And then he will be sure to go on and ask, "What good? Let Gorgias answer." Now I want you, Gorgias, to imagine that this question is asked of you by them and by me. What is that which you say is the greatest good of man, and of which you are the creator? Answer us.
So did you get all that? Socrates is just trying to make the point that useful people that do good things create something. So he asks Gorgias, what do you create? Gorgias is about to respond and say, here's what I create. Listen to Gorgias's definition of rhetoric. I want you to really understand what he's saying rhetoric is.
That good Socrates is, which is truly the greatest, being that which gives to men their freedom in their own persons, and to individuals the power of ruling over in their several states. And what would you consider this to be? What is there greater than the word, which persuades the judges in the court, or the senators in the council, or the citizens of the assembly, or at any other political meeting? If you have the power of uttering this word, you will have the physician your slave, and the trainer your slave, and the moneymaker whom you talk will be found to gather treasures not for himself, but for you, who are able to speak and persuade the multitude. Now I think, Gorgias, that you have very accurately explained what you conceive to be the art of rhetoric, and you mean to say, if I am not mistaken, that rhetoric is the artificer of persuasion, having this and no other business, and that this is her crown and end. Do you know any other effective rhetoric over and above that of producing persuasion? No. The definition seems to me very fair, Socrates, for the persuasion is the chief end of rhetoric. Then let me raise another question. There is such a thing as having learned? Yes. And there is also having believed? Yes. And is this having learned the same as having believed, and are learning and belief the same things? Well, in my judgment, Socrates, they are not the same. And your judgment is right, as you may ascertain in this way. If a person were to say to you, "Is there, Gorgias, a false belief as well as a true?" you would reply, if I am not mistaken, that there is. Yes. Well, but is there false knowledge as well as true? No. No, indeed, and this again proves that knowledge and belief differ.
So in this argument here, Socrates is setting up the point that there's two different ways of kind of knowing something. There's one way that you learn it, which means you experience it yourself. So if I touch the oven and I touch it with my hand, I know it's hot. I've learned it because my hand felt it. It felt the pain. I know that's hot. And I'm not deceived because I did it myself. That's learning. The other side of that is believing. If somebody comes and says, "You know what, that oven's really hot, don't touch it." I don't know whether it's hot or not, but I can believe that it's hot if I trust the person who told me. So if you know something, you know it. I touch the oven, it's hot. There's no question, it's hot. I have personal knowledge of that. But if you believe, then you can say, well, the person told me it's hot, but maybe he's lying. I don't know whether it's hot or not, but I trust him, so I believe that it is hot. But I don't know for myself. So there's two different types of ways. And Socrates points out that if you know it yourself, there's no question. But if you believe it, there is still a question, because you have to trust the person who told you. So two different ways of knowing, learning and believing. And believing's got a little bit of a problem to it. Let's go on. Oh, and I forgot one thing. Remember that Gorgias is a teacher. He needs people to pay him to teach. So Socrates is setting up the idea that if you only believe it, there's a problem with that. But that's all that Gorgias teaches. He teaches people just to believe things, not to actually know things. So Gorgias is kind of in a position where he has to defend why it's okay for people just to believe things, why that's a useful skill. Because if you teach people to be able to persuade other people, but you persuade them to lies, that's not useful. So Gorgias here is going to try to defend himself. Why is it okay that I teach people how to persuade others?
Very true. And yet those who have learned as well as those who have believed are persuaded. Just so. Shall we then assume two sorts of persuasion? One, which is the source of belief without knowledge, and the other is of knowledge. By all means. And which sort of persuasion does rhetoric create in courts of law and other assemblies about the just and unjust, the sort of persuasion which gives belief without knowledge, or that which gives knowledge? Clearly, Socrates, that which only gives belief. Then rhetoric, as would appear, is the artificer of persuasion which creates belief about the just and unjust, but gives no instruction about them? True. And the rhetorician does not instruct the courts of law or other assemblies about things, just as just and unjust, but he creates belief about them, for no one can be supposed to instruct such a vast multitude about such high matters in a short time. Certainly not. A marvel indeed, Socrates, if you only knew how rhetoric comprehends and holds under her sway all the inferior arts. Let me offer you a striking example of this. On several occasions, I have been with my brother Herodicus or some other physician to see one of his patients, who would not allow the physician to give him medicine, or apply the knife or hot iron to him. And I have persuaded him to do for me what he would not do for the physician, just by the use of rhetoric. Well, now, suppose a man to have been trained in the palæstra and to be a skillful boxer. He, in the fullness of his strength, goes and strikes his father or mother or one of his family or friends, but that is no reason why the trainers or fencing masters should be held in detestation or banished from the city. Surely not, for they taught their art for a good purpose, to be used against enemies and evildoers in self-defense, not in aggression, and others have perverted their instruction, and turned to a bad use their own strength and skill. But not on this account are the teachers bad, neither is the art in fault, or bad in itself. I should rather say that those who make a bad use of the art are to blame. And the same argument holds good of rhetoric. For the rhetorician can speak against all men upon any subject. In short, he can persuade the multitude better than any other man of anything which he pleases. But he should not therefore seek to defraud the physician or any other artist of his reputation merely because he has the power. He ought to use rhetoric fairly, as he would also use his athletic powers. And if, after having become a rhetorician, he makes a bad use of his strength and skill, well, his instructor surely ought not on that account to be held in detestation or banished, for he was intended by his teacher to make a good use of his instruction, but he abuses them. And therefore he is the person who ought to be held in detestation, banished, and put to death, and not his instructor.
So Gorgias is defending his job right here. He's saying, hey, my job is useful. This is a good thing. People can do good things with rhetoric. And, sometimes people may do wrong things, but that's not my fault. I teach them the skills, but if they go out and do something bad with it, that's not my fault. And Gorgias is doing this because he's trying to defend his job. Socrates is trying to attack his job. So that's an interesting question. If a teacher teaches a student how to do something, and then they go out and use it for evil, is it the teacher's fault or the student's fault? Well, Socrates is going to lay a little trap right here and tell everybody it's Gorgias's fault. Follow the trap.
Well, I cannot help feeling that you are now saying what is not quite consistent or in accordance with what you were saying at first about rhetoric. And I'm afraid to point this out to you, lest you should think that I have some animosity against you, and that I speak not for the sake of discovering the truth, but from jealousy of you. Now, if you are one of my sort, I should like to cross-examine you, but if not, I'll let you alone. And what is my sort? Well, I imagine that there is no evil which a man can endure so great as an erroneous opinion about the matters of which we are speaking. And if you claim to be one of my sort, let us have the discussion out. But if you would rather have done, no matter, let us make an end of it. Well, I should say, Socrates, that I am quite the man whom you indicate, but perhaps we ought to consider the audience, for before you came I had already given a long exhibition, and if we proceeded the argument may run on to a great length, and therefore I think that we should consider whether we may not be detaining some part of the company when they are wanting to do something else.
I always laugh a little bit at this part because Socrates says, you know what? There's something wrong with what you just said, and I want to tell you what's wrong with it. But I'm afraid that you don't really care about the truth. I'm afraid that you'll just get mad if I tell you the truth because you're wrong. And Gorgias is like, no, you can tell me the truth. Let's still talk about it. Except for, there's all these people here and they're kind of tired. Maybe we should think about them and maybe we should just go home. So Socrates is saying, I want to tell you what's wrong. And Gorgias is saying, that's okay, but these guys are tired, so maybe we should go home. Just makes me laugh a little bit. I like that Plato gave this to us in a dialogue so that there's a little bit of interest and personality to go with it. Socrates and Gorgias, they're really button heads, don't like each other.
Oh, you hear the audience cheering Gorgias and Socrates, which shows their desire to listen to you. And for myself, heaven forbid that I should have any business on hand which should take away from a discussion so interesting and so ably maintained. By the gods, Seraphon, also I have been present at many discussions. I doubt whether I was ever so much delighted before, and therefore you go on discoursing all day, I shall be the better pleased. I may truly say, Callicles, that I am willing if Gorgias is. After all this, Socrates, I should be disgraced if I refuse, especially as I have promised to answer all comers in accordance with the wishes of the company. Then do you begin and ask me any question which you like.